This episode of Tales from the Backlog is brought to you by the wonderful patrons over at patreon.com/RealDaveJackson. Some personal heroes of mine like Chris Nelson, the Top 3 Podcast Crew, Zolgeek, Colby Moyer, Eric Guess, Rick Firestone, Jill, ZNA, Cupcake, Kyle, Christian S., Matt aka Stormageddon, JD, Doug Leaf, Jason Emery, and many more have all gone to patreon.com/RealDaveJackson to kick me a few bucks and support the show. I appreciate all of you very much, and you, listener, can be just like them. All patrons of the show get bonus episodes, voting on games to appear on the show, and much more. Once again, that's patreon.com/RealDaveJackson. Any and all support is always appreciated. And with that being said, let us get on with the show. Hello everybody, my name is Dave Jackson, and you're listening to Tales from the Backlog. This is a video games review podcast where each week I'm joined by a guest to bring a game out of the backlog and talk about our experiences with it. My guest today is a friend of the show, founder and one of the many hosts on the Save the Game Media Network, a real rock star, Kevin Ainsworth. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite. I'm always happy to come on and just chat games, and you chose a really good one to talk about, so I'm really excited to sit down with you tonight.
My relief of you saying that it's a really good game is palpable right now. We didn't talk about this before doing this, so I appreciate you coming on. It's been a long time coming to get you on the show. Today we're going to talk about Hi-Fi Rush, but before we get into Hi-Fi Rush, I do want to give you the customary time at the beginning of the show. I said you're one of the founders of Save the Game Media, which is a network encompassing many podcasts and YouTube channels. So tell everybody about it. What's going on there?
Yeah, so we have a YouTube channel, Save the Game Media. You can find it, and you'll find all the video versions of our shows there and our game reviews, because we do reviews. Some day one, we're lucky enough to get some codes from some publishers. So, but the big draw is probably our podcast network. As you said, we have an Xbox show, which I'm the host of, called Project X Talk, an Xbox podcast. And then we also have a plethora of other shows. If you're interested in anything video game, nerd culture related, you can probably find it over there. We have a show called Frame by Frame, which is a film, TV, anime podcast. Anything on your screen, you'll find over there. We have a show called I Hate My Friends, which is more of a conversational podcast between the hosts of the network. We'll each bring topics and just hang out for an hour. It's like a catch up with friends, but discussing the most random stuff in the world. And then we have No Limits, a PlayStation podcast to round out. And we do have some other monthly shows and some Patreon exclusive content over there for our patrons. So we offer quite a lot of content over on Save the Game Media, and we're always looking for new community members to come on over and hang out with us and just have fun.
Yeah, I just joined your Discord server pretty recently. It's a cool place to hang out. Everyone's real friendly and chill in there. It's a good time. And the show of yours that I listen to most often is Project X Talk. And I say this to everybody who does this, but I listen to mostly the reviews of like Game Pass games or new Xbox games that I don't know anything about. And you guys are often doing stuff like that. And I appreciate everyone who does that, checking out those new games, indies and stuff like that. I think you all are doing great work, and there is more content than one person could ever consume over there. So you got all the bases covered.
That's true. It's basically 5 to 6 days a week you'll have a podcast from us to listen to. So I don't know who has 7+ hours to commit to one network's podcast. It's a lot of people.
Well, you are covering a lot of different niches in gaming. So if you're a PlayStation player, you got No Limits. If you're an Xbox player, you got Project X Talk. There's a lot of stuff. So You can check down in the show notes, listeners, for a link to where to find all of these shows on Save the Game. And we'll do a little bit more plugs later in the show. But for now, I'll just say, check it out. They're doing good work. And like I said at the beginning, today we're going to talk about Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush is a rhythm action game developed by Tango Gameworks, published by Bethesda for PC and Xbox Series consoles in 2023. Spoiler policy for the episode: if you have not played Hi-Fi Rush, have no fear. We're not going to spoil the story for you in the non-spoiler section of the show. If you want to tap out at the spoiler wall, you'll find a timestamp down in the show notes where you can get out and avoid the spoilers. This is a game where the story is not the most important thing, though. This is very gameplay focused for me personally. So we are going to talk a lot about that gameplay and then some story talk in the spoiler section. So if you don't know what Hi-Fi Rush is, a little elevator pitch for you. I wrote Devil May Cry meets an accessible rhythm game. Kevin, how about you?
So the way I like to describe Hi-Fi Rush is that if you've seen the movie Scott Pilgrim versus the World, it's basically that with action combat thrown in. It's that humor, it's that style of game. So if that didn't click with you, you might not really like the story of this game, but then you have that action, as you said, Devil May Cry combat really rounds it out.
Yep. This took me about 10 hours to beat. Not a lot of like post-game content, although there is quite a bit more content you can go back in and do if you want to. How about you? How long did this take you?
I think I rolled credits around 9-ish hours, so not much quicker than you did. I was playing on easy mode, just for the record. I have no shame playing on baby mode.
As you should not.
Yeah, so it was around 9 hours. It's I think it's the right length for this style of game.
Yeah, absolutely. It requires a lot of focus during combat and stuff. If you want to like really dig into the rhythm game stuff, it would have started to drag if it were much longer than it was. I agree. So getting into some personal histories with Hi-Fi Rush, what was it that made you want to play this? I mean, I know you're the host of an Xbox podcast, and this is a notable day one Game Pass shadow drop game, but you might not play everything that drops on Game Pass day one. So what was it about this?
Yeah, so I definitely don't play everything that drops on Game Pass day one. My co-host loves to dive into basically everything that gets added to the service, but for me, I'm a little more picky. Like my Xbox, gonna be honest, hasn't even been on in about a month, but I wanted to check out Hi-Fi Rush because we were live reacting to the developer direct where this was revealed. And immediately I was like, this game, I loved the colors, I loved the humor, everything about it screamed to me something I would be into. And I was a little concerned because I'm not a rhythm-based combat style guy. Like I tried Metal Hellsinger. That's another game that's one of those rhythm-based shooting games, and I could not play it. So I was a little concerned going into this one, but I was like, you know what? I like Tango. They put out Ghostwire Tokyo last year, which I really enjoyed. It wasn't my favorite game. I think there's some flaws in it, but I wanted to give their smaller project and something that wasn't a horror like their other projects a chance for once. So I was pleasantly surprised when I jumped in and I was like, this was right from the get-go exactly what I wanted. It didn't punish you for being offbeat. It was really fun, action, the humor hit every single time. So I was just really interested. As you said, host an Xbox show. I like to check out their big titles at least, especially because they are on Game Pass, but this one was something special, man.
Yeah. For me, it was partly the shadow drop. Like I think the shadow drop worked really well to like drum up excitement for it during that kind of that direct that they were doing. But I didn't want to play it just based on that. And I have never played a game by Tango. I didn't play Ghostwire Tokyo or the Evil Within. I think they did too.
Yep.
So I don't have any history with this developer. I don't have any history with Shinji Mikami, who's the biggest name associated, except for Resident Evil 4. That's basically it. So it was more just like that shadow drop happened, and then like the next day. And then the next day, I started to see more and more people on Twitter and in Discord servers and stuff basically saying like, hey, like the initial shock is over. This game's just really fucking good. You should play this. And I was like, oh, okay. And it's right there on Game Pass. So why not? You know, fire it up. If it sucks, I'll stop playing. But it did not suck. This game rules.
Yeah, it's funny that you mention this because I've said for a long time now that Xbox has struggled to have a game that really captured the zeitgeist of like the internet. And you see that in other, like Nintendo's had that. They have it coming up with Tears of the Kingdom. PlayStation obviously has had that. They've had The Last of Us be a huge success. That just this year they had Ragnarok last year, like Spider-Man. They've had those zeitgeist moments. Xbox hasn't had that in a while. So when you saw people blowing up about how good this game was, Day of the Shadow drop, After the Shadow, I'm like, okay, maybe this is just like an excitement thing. It's going to die down. As you said, it didn't die down. It was like a week later, people were still talking about Hi-Fi Rush, and I was playing at that point, so I understood. But I was like, this is what you need: the hype, and then to back it up with quality, because this game took everyone by surprise, and it deserves it. It's still, I think, the highest rated game of the year, or one of the highest rated games of the year. So bravo to Tango for really capturing the moment there.
Yeah, just to get into some real quick opening thoughts, a little tease for the big deep dive coming. But I agree. I think this game is really, really good. It strikes me as having like some real indie game energy from a bigger company. I mean, this very obviously was like someone at the top of this company thought, I have a really cool idea for a game. And it's not like anything else that's out there in the AAA landscape. And I think I did read that they were sitting on this idea for a long time trying to get it made. And it shows that they've spent a lot of time thinking about how to do this right, because the big thing that struck me when I was playing is that not only is this game fun, but it's super tightly designed. And there are so many things in the design that help you play a rhythm action game. Like imagine playing Bayonetta or Devil May Cry, but not being allowed to button mash, which is how I play those games. That's what this is, but they did it really fucking well. It's great.
Yeah, no, I think you summed it up perfectly with, this is a passion project. You can tell from the get-go that this isn't a AAA game, despite coming from a AAA studio. This is and the price point reflected that. I think it was $30, which helped. Yeah, I know it's Steam reception. Certainly people were buying it left and right over there, but you can tell that this was something that I think it was John Jonas over there at Tango, he just wanted to make a game that was for something different for the studio. I think they talked about they don't want to be pigeonholed into, we're the horror studio. And this really helped them break out of that. Now people are like, okay, this is a studio that can do horror, but they can also do something else. They can be original, and I don't think anyone expected this from them, and I love that they pulled it off so well, because it could have been bad, right? Like this game could have come out and it could have been one of those rhythm games that's like it doesn't feel good to play, the movement's stiff, or like it's too punishing on the timing, and it isn't any of those things. It's so forgiving and rewarding to play. Like it's forgiving enough for people who are bad at this to still have a good time, but rewarding enough that if you get good, it's gonna feel amazing.
Yep, exactly. So that is a good way to open up with some thoughts, and we're going to take a little music break. Big thing in this game is the music, so enjoy some. Then when we come back, we're going to set up the story. So in Hi-Fi Rush, you play as Chai, who's a 25-year-old man with a disabled right arm and a dream to become a rock star. It's a little tease for just the kind of like energy and vibe that this game's story is working with. Chai goes to this company called Vandelay Technologies, nice Seinfeld reference there, to volunteer for something called Project Armstrong to get a strong new arm, a cybernetic limb. So during Chai's operation, there's a kind of mistake where the Vandelay president named Kale, everyone's named after some kind of food in this game, Kale throws away Chai's MP3 player and it falls into his chest somehow and gets embedded in there during the process. So now, after the operation, Chai can feel a musical connection with his surroundings. And Chai is labeled a defect. The company is going to try and sweep this accident under the rug. And they set out to basically kill Chai. And you have to escape. So you team up with a couple of friends, a robot cat named 808 and a woman named Peppermint, along with a couple others that you'll meet throughout the game. You learn about this evil plot that this big corporation has, and you're off. You're set to take them down. And that's kind of the story setup. And just want to get your thoughts about, number one, did you enjoy the story? Was it fun? And number two, how did you feel about the kind of overall vibe of the story? Because it's not a serious capitalism critique, you know.
Yeah, I liked the story for what it was, and I'm glad they didn't. It's silly. It's a silly concept.
It's silly.
It's fun though. It could have been like they overly serious or something that wasn't really lending itself to matching the music and the art style, but instead they know what the tone of this game is. I decided at the beginning it's very much a Scott Pilgrim-esque tone when you've got things going on here. It's some awkward humor. It's just the funny silliness of things, like how cool can you be in kind of a lame way almost. I like the story well enough. It's not going to blow anyone away. It's not going to win any writing critique or writing awards there, but I really enjoyed my time with it. It's fun. It's a fun story.
Yeah, it's got big like Saturday morning cartoon vibes. You know, if you were to watch a cartoon that is, you know, has those things, you know, how cartoons will be like enjoyable for kids, but also have something there for the adults. And that's kind of the vibe that this game has too. I guess we can just talk about the visuals and music right now because we're on the subject of cartoons. So it's drawn and animated like a cartoon or an anime or something. Like you said, it's got that really silly vibe to the game. It fits really, really well. It's a super colorful game. You mentioned that too. There's tons of detail as you're going around in the levels. This is reflected in the gameplay too. So I'll mention this again, the detail in the levels. But I mean, hats off to the artists, the animators. Everything here is really, really well done, like artistically.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that always sticks out to me is you'll have those cinematics, right? Where it's you can tell it's not gameplay, but it almost looks like it's still in-engine game going on. But it very much gives you like, oh, I could watch a TV show of this game right now. Like that's how good it looks. It's popping off the page. It's comic booky at some points. Like I adore it. I adore the way this game looks.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. And the other part of the equation here with the presentation is the voice acting and the music. I did not look up the voice cast, but they are professional. They're great. And this is one of the things where I was playing and I was like, this game has real indie game energy, but they also seem like they paid for really good voice actors. They paid for licensed music, of course, too. But I want to shine a light on the voice actors for a second because they're great playing these kind of cartoonish characters. Everybody's over the top, especially the villains in the game.
Yeah, I know the main Chai, the main character, is voiced by Robbie Damon, which he is very well known in the voice acting community. And for a game that I've been playing recently, even though I played it subbed, the Legend of Heroes series, Trails. Okay. He voices Lloyd Bannings over there, but he's known for other stuff. He was in Fire Emblem Three Hopes. He's been in Horizon Forbidden West. Like Like
Okay.
he's very well known, and he's not the only one. Peppermint is Erica Lindbeck, which she has a lot of pedigree as well. She was in Fire Emblem Engage. She was Captain Marvel in Midnight Suns. She was in Ragnarok. Like she's been very successful, and that is the kind of quality voice actors you're going to get throughout this entire game. They
Yeah.
didn't skip on Roger Craig Smith is the main antagonist in this game, guys. Like you have quality here to match the stunning visuals and then the soundtrack. If we're talking about that, like original music, some non-original, like I thought that I was like, okay, they made music for this game. Like, how good is it actually going to be? And I love listening to the soundtrack to this game. It is a blast.
Yeah, so we've got licensed music from bands like the Black Keys, Nine Inch Nails, Flaming Lips, among others that I saw in the credits. Strangely, I didn't hear some of these. I heard the Nine Inch Nails song because that plays in a very prominent portion of the game. But I don't remember hearing the Black Keys. I might have had the streamer mode turned on, which puts in all the original songs so that streamers don't get copyright strikes on Twitch. I wasn't streaming on Twitch, but anyway, the licensed songs are good. And the key thing here is that like most of the time as you're going through the levels and even during some of the boss fights, you have original music, which is also really fun. It's this kind of jam band rock type music that, it goes, these missions can be like up to an hour long. And sometimes you'll be listening to the same song for most of that. And it was really good that never really got old to me. It kind of fades in the background. And then when the action picks up, it gets brought up like more intensity in the music. Just really well done.
Yeah, I think there was a risk that like, oh, I'm going to have to hear the same songs over and over, which you don't, luckily, but you do hear, as you said, the same song for quite a while because the levels can take they take longer than you think they would. There are a few that are short in there in between, but there are definitely some long levels in this game. And if we want to, what I like about the game is how they blend the music to the combat. As you mentioned, when you get into a combat sequence, right? Like the music intensifies. But you've been hearing this track for 20, 30 minutes at this point. Like you know the rhythm, you know the beat, you know everything. And that I think is by design because in order to be successful in your combos and everything, to nail it, you got to hit it along with the rhythm. You got to hit it with that beat. And since it's been drilled into you, it's almost second nature at a certain point where you're like, okay, this is the next, like, this is how the song goes. I'm flowing now. I don't have to focus so much as hearing, more so like visual cues or what's going on to try to improve those combos, to get your juggling down, to get your parries. I love the way it blends and makes you feel like you are rewarded for not only listening, because you should be listening to this game, but also seeing what's on the screen.
Yeah, that is a good time to just bring up how the combat works. So, as you said, you're fighting along to the beat. This is a rhythm game at its core. So, all of your swings, Chai has this guitar made up of spare parts that kind of conglomerate to make this guitar weapon that he swings. So, your swings are on the beat of the songs that are playing. And they said that this was inspired by Edgar Wright movies, Shaun of the Dead, stuff like that. Movies that really expertly match up music with action. It's one of my favorite things about them. So you're swinging along with the beat, and this could be like one of those things that if it was not done really well, it would have been terrible. But they made so many decisions in here. Number one, to help people that are not great at rhythm games or can't be great at rhythm games. And also to turn like hitting on the beat into a bonus instead of like the necessity. So you can swing off the beat if you want to, or if you miss a beat because you button mash like me, it's fine. You're not going to like, it's not like Guitar Hero where it doesn't work if you don't hit it on the beat. You'll still hit the enemy. You'll still do damage. Everything you do will still work. If you hit on the beat, you get a bonus. And if you hit, a combo on the beat, then you'll get this kind of QTE for like the big finishing move of the combo. So you're being rewarded for hitting on the beat, not punished for missing the beat. And I think that's like the first decision that they made when doing this, where they're like, we want to make a rhythm game, but it would really suck if we made this really difficult action game and punished people for missing rhythm too. So this is just a fantastic decision right off the bat.
Yeah, like I said, that was one of my big concerns because when I played like Metal Hellsinger, for example, if
Yeah.
you weren't on beat, your gun wouldn't fire, and then you're basically helpless. Here,
Yep.
not the case, where there were times, especially at the start, where I was nowhere near the beat and my combos were still coming out. It still felt fun to play, and I was like, okay, this is encouraging me to keep going, to keep trying to figure it out. And then by the end of it, I had combos that were like my go-to, where you would mix in the light and heavy attacks. And one of my favorite gameplay things they do in this is the air juggling. I think it's so satisfying, especially when you get those combos to knock enemies up, and then you use that almost tethering mechanic to pull yourself up or to a different enemy, and you can be in the air for 30 seconds at a time, not touching the ground, just destroying everything. I absolutely like that is what's fun to me. And did I ever get like S ranks on stuff in combat or levels? No, but at the end of the game, I was hitting like B's and some A's. So it's like you see that progress. Like when I started, I was getting D's and terrible grading for timing and stuff. But then you improve and you get better because it just rewards you for wanting to, even when you're not the best at these types of games.
Right. Yeah. So that's why I made the Devil May Cry comparison in the elevator pitch, because it is combos. You can air juggle, like you said. There's a dodge, there's a parry. You get a grade after every like chapter that you go through. And kind of like you, like I don't go for the high grades. I don't go for the high grades in like Bayonetta or games that don't have a rhythm aspect to them too. But again, that the key thing is that, let's say for 5 seconds, you just fuck up and you're just way off the beat. You're still doing damage. You can still dodge out of the way if something tries to hit you. You can still block. It's fine. You just don't get that bonus. The other thing that makes this really, really great is all of the ways that they help you get back on the beat or stay on it in the middle of a long combo or something. Like you said, all that time going through the levels, exploring and stuff, the song is still playing, and they're kind of like subconsciously training you on what the beat is, because everything in the environment, not everything, but things around the environment will be pulsing to the beat, moving to the beat. All the NPCs that you see, they'll be moving to the beat. Chai runs to the beat. His footsteps are in the cadence. So by the time you hit a battle, you don't have to find the beat. You've been doing it the whole time. And during the battles, they have all these other things to help you. So the music picks up so you can hear the beat a little bit better. 808 is the cat that kind of floats around, gives you a visual indicator, kind of flashing a light to the beat. There's a crowd in like the backing track. They cheer for you on the beat, and so many other things. When you hit an enemy, it will do a little like guitar chord when you hit. And it's just all these things together combine to be like one of the friendliest action games I've ever played. Like they want you to succeed, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do. And it was, I remember the tutorial was like, there's multiple ways to be successful with your combos. Like you can hear it, or the visual cues also work because they match it perfectly. And it's not like, I always felt like you would hit the button and then the action would happen. So then you can hit it again instead of you hit the button and you hear it there was almost a delay, if that makes sense, where you hit the X button, Chai does the attack, and then by the time it connects, you can hit it again to continue your combo on the beat.
Right. Like you're pressing, like you press X, there's a quarter note delay until the attack hits, and then you press the button again on the like strike when it hits. And then you have all these combos, so you can mix in your heavy attacks, which take 2 quarter notes, a half note, if you will, and you can really like if you're in the groove in this game, you're in it. Like, and I don't know about you, like when you play these action games, like let's say a Devil May Cry or a Bayonetta or something, do you do combos or do you button mash?
I usually find a few combos that work. Like in this one, I was very reliant on usually like X X Y, then X X. Like there were just a few of those where I'll find a few that I prefer or like maybe work better on certain enemies, and then stick to those because there's like 20 something, probably more combos in
There's
that
a lot.
list, and I'm like, I'm not going to be doing all that. If anything, like I will stick to the few I know, and then I will repeat those over and over again, or and maybe free form with some of the tethering stuff you can do in this game, and then you have your super moves you can throw in there to mix it up. But no, I'm not one of those like I'm going to learn down to every single combo.
Right. Yeah, not necessarily like learning every combo, but I covered on the show a couple months ago Stranger of Paradise, the Final Fantasy Origin game. And that game is full of combos, and you like customize your moves and your like magic spells and stuff based on the combos. But I just ended up doing XXXXY or XXY, stuff like very simple stuff like that. And that's, in a Bayonetta, I am button mashing the fuck out of those games. I don't do any combos. In this, because I'm slowed down and thinking about striking on the rhythm, it was much more easy for me to also think about, okay, X, X, Y, rest, X, X, finishing move. And even if I'm not like memorizing combos in this game, I'm still thinking while I'm doing it, which is something I just never do. In Stranger of Paradise, I was like, oh, I've pressed X a bunch now. It's time for a finishing move on this combo. In this one, I'm like really thinking about it. And I want to give this game a lot of credit for probably being the first action game to actually make me think about my combos like that.
That's interesting, because when I play these types of games, like I'll play some fighting games. I'm very big into Smash competitively. I used to play that game, and then I'll play not the hardcore fighting games. Like you won't catch me playing a Street Fighter because that's a bit too much quarter circle and the inputs and everything. But I'll stick to like Guilty Gear. I really like Persona. Ultimax, I enjoy. Those games they're a little more simplified, where you have, especially in Persona and something like Dragon Ball FighterZ, where you get those, you can hit the same button over and over again. You don't have to do the complicated input. So that's kind of how I felt this game was, where you could go that level deeper to have the crazy input chain, or you can just simplify and hit the same button over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're concerned about your score, then you do want to mix up your combos and stuff like that. I don't care about my letter grade in these games, so I was fine just kind of free flowing combos. Even if I probably just did the same 4 combos for the entire game, I was still at least thinking about it,
Can I mention one thing I don't like in this
Sure,
game?
yeah, of course.
Parries.
You didn't like it? Okay.
Hot take. Parry is the worst game mechanic in any video game. I hate parrying. I will always choose to dodge. God of War Ragnarok, I'm going to try to dodge. I'm most likely not going to hit your parries. Don't ask me to play a Souls game. I'm not going to do it. I tried Bloodborne a few months ago.
I remember that, yeah.
And nope. You're just not getting me to do it. I can't do parries. I'm gonna block or dodge every single time. And this game, especially one of the boss fights, relied heavily on parrying. And I almost quit the game at that point. I was I died multiple times. It took me forever. And I'm sitting here, I was like, maybe I'm just not good enough to play the game anymore. Like, if this is what's going to be required. I luckily got through it and finished it, but it was very annoying for me as someone that doesn't like that mechanic.
It's really hit and miss. Bloodborne's maybe my favorite game ever. I like the parrying in there because it makes sense to me and my personal timing. But in Elden Ring and Dark Souls, I can't parry. I just can't fucking do it. So I don't like it in that game. And it's really hit and miss throughout all the games I like, whether I parry or not. God of War Ragnarok, and I did the parry in that game. It felt good to me. This one, I didn't really parry during regular combat much. What I did do is you do get into these parry challenges that are basically just like Simon says, repeat things to the beat, again, always to the beat. And I enjoyed those a lot, but mostly because those are like only really tough enemies or bosses do those to you. Mm-hmm. And against the really tough enemies, those are instant kill if you do them right. And those are really hard enemies if you're not doing the parry challenge. So it was like, I'm kind of getting sweaty trying to fight this big tough enemy. Then the parry challenge comes up. I'm like, oh, I can nail this and just kill this thing right away. I can do that. Mm-hmm. Some of those boss fights did get tough with the parries. It's a good time to talk about the boss fights too. Those are kind of half what you've been doing with the rhythm combat stuff, especially with dodging out of the way of attacks or parrying. But they also all have a puzzle aspect to them too, which trying to figure out how to make them vulnerable to attacks. And I thought that they're big spectacles. They have great music. Not always great as far as like boss fights went. Like I loved going through the game fighting the regular enemies, and I loved probably half the bosses, and the other half I was like, this fucking sucks. I want this to be over. Yeah.
I really only disliked the parrying boss, which is funny because that boss is maybe my favorite character in the entire game. So that's a funny dichotomy there. For the most part, I didn't find any of the bosses too difficult. There was one towards the end where the wolf. I don't think that's a spoiler. The big, yeah.
Not to say that there is a wolf.
Yeah, there's a wolf. That one, I think. Every time I thought I won, and then it kept going, that one kind of worried. I was like, I'm running low on health here. Like we need to get this sorted out. So there were those moments where I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna make this one. I really don't want to do this whole fight. But I persevered. I didn't think it was anything overly difficult apart from the parrying nonsense.
Right. Yeah. Maybe I was a little bit too harsh. I don't think that half of the bosses are terrible, but there were a couple that are probably just really sticking out in my head as being like, I really hated this. Went on too long, perhaps, or I just got punished too hard for messing up while learning the fight, stuff like that. But overall, they're pretty good. Again, the music is great during the boss fights. Mm-hmm. You often get vocals come in during the music. I don't remember if it's like during specific parts of boss fights where the vocals come in, or if it's like when you're carrying an S rank. I can't remember, but you do get vocals sometimes.
Yeah, there's definitely vocals. I don't know if it's tied to anything or if it just plays. I never really paid attention to that. Before we hop off gameplay, I feel like one important aspect we need to talk about is calling in your teammates.
Sure, yeah.
So that one, this is a mechanic where you can hit. I forget actually how you do it. One of the triggers or something. I
think it's left trigger.
Hit left trigger, and you can call in one of your teammates who will show up in the battlefield, and then they'll either They can help you solve puzzles if you're out of battle because they each have a unique ability. Like one can shoot, one can smash things, one can make wind. But they can also do stuff in battle, like take down shields, or they can stun enemies for a certain amount of time. They get their own upgrades and stuff too. And I really liked this. It did feel a little broken after you got all three of them because you could just cycle through and have all three active at once. And I was like,
they're on cooldowns, but like you can summon one and then summon the next one and then summon the third one. And by the time the third one's out there, the cooldown's ready again.
Yeah. I would just spam it constant and then I'd be like, okay, I'm going to be fighting, but like everyone else is also on the battlefield. It made it look awesome. Like it was very cool, but I did feel it was a bit broken of a mechanic. I don't know. It also allowed you to do like unique combos and finishers. I don't know if you got any of those.
Yeah, because you can the button to summon your teammate, you can throw that into a combo sometimes. Yep. And that's a cool I never did that because I was too busy focusing on the rhythm, but I know that you can do it.
Yeah, I got a few where I didn't know that, because like I would go to the shop and I would just buy everything. And I wouldn't really look at what it was because I'm like, I'm just going to buy it. And then I would just do that and occasionally just get like a team up combo move. And I was like, oh, that was really cool. I have no idea how I did that though.
Yeah. Yeah, I never quite did that. I did have a couple times where like you can summon in Peppermint and she'll shoot an enemy with her guns. You can break down shields, like you said. Your summons like this often serve as like breaking down an enemy's defense, or like this enemy is shooting out fire. You call in someone to put out the fire so you can attack them safely. Light puzzle stuff like that. But I would often also, if I'm like nearing the end of one of these battle arenas or a boss fight and I'm real low on health, I'll just like summon in Peppermint and plink them down and run around and avoid attacks while that's happening.
Me too.
Yeah.
Like I gotta dodge for my life, but like also he's almost dead. So like maybe Peppermint could just kill him.
Yeah. Did you find this game to be difficult now that we're on this subject?
Well, I was playing on easy, so I didn't find it overly difficult, but it wasn't meant to be on easy, so not for me. I imagine if I was on a higher difficulty, I probably would have struggled a bit more.
Yeah, I played on whatever the standard difficulty is, and there were parts that did get tough, especially a couple of boss fights later in the game, and every now and then in one of these like combat gauntlets that you do, I would just like maybe get careless or something and I'd be like, oh shit, I died. Okay, time to dial it back in to try and get through this. So it's not a hard game, but it's not an easy game either. It's still got some of that like action game DNA where they're like, you need to pay attention. You need to dodge attacks. You need to parry. You need to try and get the damage bonus from fighting on the beat and stuff. But there was one boss that gave me a hell of a time. We'll talk about it in the spoiler section. Other than that, they were all mostly fine.
Yeah. No, I like I said, if I was on a higher difficulty, I think I would have struggled with this game.
Yeah. One thing that did kind of get old for me is the way that the game is structured. The levels are structured, I'll say, is you'll have exploration sections where you're doing platforming, third person platforming, picking up collectibles. Really reminded me of Ratchet and Clank. You're picking up nuts and bolts. That's probably why, but it's also the same kind of thing in Ratchet and Clank. Platforming, doing some light puzzle solving, picking up stuff. And then you come to these battle gauntlets, and a level will have a lot of these like battle arenas, and there's not enough variety in the game where like in the last couple levels we started to get into like the battle gauntlets, and it's like I've seen these same enemies now like 30, 40, 50 times. I'm tired of fighting these things, and it doesn't matter what combination you put them in. I don't want to fight any more of these things. It started to kind of feel that way later in the game. Luckily, the game ended like an hour or two later, but I did feel that.
Yeah, no, I would echo that as well, because I definitely thought that the game, I was like, if this goes on too much longer, it's running the risk of like getting into too bad pacing. But then luckily,
Yeah.
because I do feel there is a lull in the middle where you start off really strong, the first opening levels, and then you kind of get into a little lull, and then they pick it back up for I would say the last 3 levels I think are really well done, especially the last 2 especially I think are fantastic. But they pick it back up. So there is that little lull where, as you were saying, how many times can I kill the same colored robots that are not really going to put up a challenge? Or, oh, you threw a big guy in there this time. Like, what a surprise. I haven't seen that in 10 minutes. Like, let's move this along. Let's get this going. And then you break up that monotony with, I don't know if it's not the most exciting platforming. Also because I don't think the game is meant to be like it has platforming elements, but it's not really a platformer. Like it doesn't control as well as a platformer, like a straight platformer should control. Like
it's a little bit off.
Yeah, it's a little bit off. Like Chai feels just a bit weird when he's jumping and like moving through the air out of combat.
There were just enough times where I thought I had timed up a jump correctly and I was just short. Like just enough of those where I was like, this it's fine as a platformer, and doing all these like bonus things like sliding on rails and like
which are fun.
Zip lining, that's the word. Those are fun. And solving the puzzles around, it's engaging. There's a lot of timed puzzles too. That's where I started to feel like I thought I made the jump right and I was just a couple inches short, and it just happened a little bit too often. But I enjoyed going through the levels and exploring. I felt rewarded for exploring. It was really when they're like, all right, platforming time. I was like, oh, okay, I guess.
Yeah, there were, especially towards I know there were a few lava sections where you had your timing for like when the rocks came up, and if you didn't jump at the right time, like, or you didn't jump and dash, then you weren't going to make the jumps appropriately. Like there were a few times where I fell and I was like, I should have made that. Why didn't I make that? So like you said, it's just a little bit off in that, but I mean, I would have liked to see a few less empty hallways. They're not empty because you get the boxes where you smash, and then you get that, like, there's a few NPCs to talk to, which are all well and good, but there are little parts where I was like, we could have cut this level down a little, or like taken out this little walkway section just to speed things up a bit.
Yeah, there were a couple times where, like, I don't know if this game really needs to have levels that are like an hour long, because there were a couple that are legitimately an hour long.
Yeah.
Which you start to feel it when it's like explore break boxes, get these treats, and then combat arena, and then you repeat that 7 times, and then you fight the boss. Sometimes that did start to wear on me, but like I said, it does. As soon as I started to feel that way, then it was like, okay, we're ramping up toward the ending right now. And then the last couple levels, or at least the last level, I think, is just the boss fight. It's not, these exploring and platforming things anymore. So it's, once I started to feel that way, then the game was like, hey, you're feeling that way, huh? Let's wrap this up.
Yeah, I would, if we're looking at the track list, because there's 12 levels, or 12 tracks is what they call them. I would say that, and I'm just looking at them, and I know track 7 and 8, I think, are really the ones where it's like, this, or maybe 6 too, to extent. So like I said, that middle section can get a bit of a lull, but if you can just get by that, because then the last few are really, really fun, especially one where maybe I'll touch on the spoilers, but there is a part in here that was just, it was so good to just play at the end.
Yeah. And to be clear, like, I'm bringing this up as something that I felt during my experience, but like, if I'm going to make a pie chart of like Dave's having the best time versus Dave's feeling a little tired, it's like 95% Dave's having the best time playing this. Like wide grin while playing this game for most of it,
Yeah, no, I would feel the same way, especially because this game came out when I was playing Fire Emblem Engage, and then I was like, I don't want to play Fire Emblem Engage right now. I want to play Hi-Fi Rush, and it was like, Mainly that has to do with Hi-Fi Rush being great, but also I think Fire Emblem Engage was not very good, unfortunately. So there was also that part of it where I finished both of them, but Hi-Fi Rush was a much better experience. And that one was like, I'm gonna, and I was moving, and I remember I beat this game on the Friday. I like finished moving everything in. I sat down, and I was like, I'm gonna play Hi-Fi Rush for the next 4 hours.
Hell
And
yeah.
I just beat it.
Yeah, this is a real breath of fresh air. Like we mentioned it at the top, but it's just such a unique game in so many ways, from the way this gameplay works that we described to the presentation, the music, the rhythm aspect to it, the humor and goofiness of it all. It really felt like, I don't know what I was playing at the same time as this, like trying to think back. This came out in like January or something. So maybe I was like playing Tunic or something like that. And it was just like anytime I was thinking like, do I want to pick up Tunic again? I think I'd rather play Hi-Fi Rush right now. Like one of those games just felt great.
Yeah, no, I would say the same.
Yeah. So I think that's a good time to get into some final thoughts and recommendations for Hi-Fi Rush. So at the end here, we'll always just ask the question, Kevin, who would you recommend Hi-Fi Rush to?
I would recommend Hi-Fi Rush to everyone, actually. I think normally these are the games where it's like if you aren't a rhythm fan or you aren't a fan of action games, then maybe don't pick this up. But I feel like because you can play on easy mode and you don't get punished, and it is very accessible, that like there's really no reason to exclude anyone from this game, unless for some reason you really can't stand the art style or something with the story doesn't sit well with you. But the game, it's just fun, it's lighthearted, and there's really no reason for me not to say everyone can enjoy this, because I think this is a game that can appeal to everyone.
Yeah, it does have a little something that, like, if you're an action game fan, like a character action game fan, if you love Bayonetta, Devil May Cry, and Metal Gear Rising, play this because it's got that for you. And I do think that like the amount of combos, the amount of upgrades, the amount of ways you can approach combat situations, getting into air juggling and all that stuff. So if you're a sicko for that kind of stuff, getting the S ranks, I think that this game will support that for you. So that type of person for sure. If you like rhythm games, absolutely play this. If you want to like rhythm games but are not normally good at them, this is another game for you, because of all those ways that they're just like, hey, fighting along with the beat of a song might be pretty difficult for a lot of people for various different reasons. Here's 15 ways we're going to make it easier for you. So that's great. And, aside from just like those specific groups of people, if you're always looking for unique video games that are, if you're looking for passion projects, like you said earlier, Kevin, Hi-Fi Rush is just like a poster child for someone had this cool idea and they were like, I'm going to make this, I'm going to make it the best it can possibly be, or this team worked together on it. And the result is just so great that if you value video games that are like, not like other stuff that's out there in the landscape, you got to try this. It's just really great.
Absolutely.
So before getting into spoilers, we'll do a little bit of housekeeping here. So Kevin, again, I'm going to put a link down in the show notes for Save the Game podcast and YouTube channel and stuff. But is there anywhere else people should look for you, social media, stuff like that?
Yeah, if you want to come follow us over on Twitter, that's probably our primary social media platform. It's at Save Game Media. Just at Save Game Media. Stay up to date whenever we post new stuff. You can find us again on YouTube at Save the Game Media. We're on every podcast feed. If you probably type in Save the Game Media, you'll get every show that we put on there, but they each have their own feed. So if, say, you're only interested in Xbox or PlayStation, you can just go to that curated feed and just have that there for you. So all that is taken care of. Just come on over, hang out. We have a Discord you can come join if you want to chat with us some more. And if you want to follow my weird ramblings and answer polls like, do you prefer Crash Bandicoot or The Division? My Twitter is at the Muffin Mon. That's over on Twitter. It's 1 and 7 I and O and 7 A.
Gotcha. Yeah. So the podcasts have something for a lot of different people. You've got game reviews, you've got the news. So whatever you want in those specific niches, Save the Game's got you covered. So for Tales from the Backlog, it's the same podcast stuff as always. Really appreciate ratings and reviews if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Podcast Addict. That would be really appreciated. There's also a Patreon page if you want to support monetarily and get some cool treats like the ability to vote on games that come up on the show, bonus episodes, stuff like that. That's also appreciated, but certainly not pushing that on anybody. I also do a show called a Top 3 Podcast where each episode, my 3 best friends and I do top 3 lists together. It's a much different vibe from this show. If you want to hear me talk about things that are not video games, that's the place to do it. That's a Top 3 Podcast. So yeah, join the Discord server also. Come in and talk about Hi-Fi Rush with everyone this week. I know we've got a lot of people in there that played it, loved it. We would love to have you. So Kevin and I are going to take a break. When we come back, it's full spoiler time for Hi-Fi Rush. All right, Kevin and I are back, and it's time for full spoiler time for Hi-Fi Rush. And this is not the most spoilable game, so if you wandered in here by accident, maybe leave if you don't want to know what happens in the story or don't want us to talk shop about bosses, but not the most spoilable game that we've had on the show so far. So we'll just kind of start this off. Kevin, you have any favorite bosses, favorite levels, anything that really stuck out to you as like really awesome?
I do. So I would say that my favorite boss, and I don't even know if you would call this a boss, but it is at the end of the game where you have to take down that giant robot.
Yeah, that's great.
And and then you actually play as the robot side character that's been with you the whole time, which is like
he's been talking shit to you the whole time too.
It's hilarious because it puts you, it's like no one else can get to the little device that you need to take down the road. And he's like, I can do it. And then it almost gives you a tutorial again. It's like jump. And I was like, yo, what are we doing here? Like you played the whole game as Chai. Now you're playing as this silly robot guy.
Yeah.
I really like that. That was a good like moment in the game for me. I think my other big standout, and this, like I said, my least favorite boss fight was against Corsica, which I did not like the parrying, but she's my favorite character in this game by far. Like she wasn't a character I knew was going to join the part. Like that was a surprise to me. And right. I like that because she didn't seem evil like the rest of them. And then just her personality and everything, the way she progresses throughout the game, I was like, I love where they went with this character. Like I'm really glad that they just incorporated her into the game as more than just a throwaway boss.
Yeah, that one was fun. Like I think I got burned like it's either the fight before that or the fight after it when you fight Mimosa, which is like really hard for me. And then the Corsica fight was not that hard. I don't know, something about it, like the parrying in it, I was just like, I was locked in the zone for it. So that was fun. But I did like how, like you said, they kind of, before you fight her, you have some conversations where you can tell that like she doubts that everything that Vandelay's been telling her is true. And so they kind of foreshadowed that she's going to be able to be turned and join the party. So that was cool. Agreed. Mm-hmm. I thought the Mimosa fight, like I said, was really difficult. It's my least favorite fight in the game. I just had a really hard time reading what was going to happen. So if let's just say hypothetically I died 30 times in this game, half of them were in this boss fight. I just like couldn't get it for the longest time. Like way past the point of like I'm enjoying the challenge of learning a boss fight, and now it's like I don't know what else I can do. I'm just mad now. Like it's the only time this game ever put me in that spot.
Mimosa is the concert boss, right?
The concert.
I love that boss fight.
The spectacle's great. I hated the boss fight part of it Like
Oh, okay.
the scene is awesome.
Yeah. I was like, it's funny because like the crowd is like cheering and you're like basically killing who they're there to see, right? Like,
Yeah.
And it came after like what I thought was a pretty lackluster level. Because the level was more so like, this is the history of Vandalay. And like you get some reveals in there like that Kale is Peppermint's brother, which.
Right.
How could we have ever seen that coming? The only two characters with the same skin tone in the whole game are related. It's so obvious, but then you get that boss fight, and that really that elevated it for me. I really like that boss fight.
The way you say that makes it sound like it's the most obvious thing in the world, but like I am just continually never ready for a twist in anything I play or watch. If there's a twist, I will get fooled by it, and this one too. Didn't see it coming.
Oh, that's so funny to me because I knew immediately, like as soon as I met both of them, I was like, "Oh, that's her brother."
Right.
Like
yeah.
and I'm sure in retrospect, you're like, "How did I not see it?" Like
well, now that you explain it, yeah, absolutely. But like when I'm playing, I'm not that observant like that. No, like I can't think of a game recently that had a big twist that I saw coming. I am surprised by them every single time.
I'm good at predicting this kind of stuff. So for me, I felt this one was pretty on the nose, but there were a few good moments. Like I didn't know why he was going against the family, right? Because like
Kale, you mean?
Yeah, Kale.
Yeah.
Why Kale was going against his family. Because that's clearly not like what the rest of his family wanted the company to be. He kind of went all maniacal.
Yeah, just, evil CEO's kid or whatever, something like that. It's not a story that like I was ever like, hey, I wonder why they're doing that. When I was playing, I was like, oh, I'm here for the ride. This is just a fun little roller coaster we're going on.
And that's why I think there isn't much to spoil about the story because it is basically as straightforward as it sounds. Like stop evil corporation from taking over the world. Yeah,
and that Scott Pilgrim analogy that you made earlier is perfect because now that we're in the spoiler section, you're literally just going from like manager to manager to manager, beating the shit out of them, and then getting to Kale at the end.
I didn't even think of it like you go for X to X. Not. I just meant like the humor and everything.
Well, that too. Instead of beating up the ex-boyfriends, you're beating up the department heads. That's what you're doing.
In Hi-Fi Rush, you beat up the ex-boyfriends of Peppermint. New game,
right? So there was a nice moment while we're on the subject of the story. There's a part where everyone gets trapped in like this energy prison cell or something like that, and there's a nice like power of friendship moment, the cliche, but it's really nice because everyone's like, they're not mean to Chai throughout the game, but they certainly don't believe in him for the entire game. And then we have this moment where everyone's like, Chai, we believe in you. You can do this. And he breaks them out. And then you go basically finish the game. So that was like the one moment where I was like, oh, that was pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's definitely a heartwarming moment, especially because, like you said, they tease him a lot throughout the game, and he brings it upon himself because he is he's not the smartest human being at certain points. So the things he says or does, it always works out for him because he's got that happy-go-lucky main protagonist plot armor, but that moment, it's funny because you have to do like some rhythm stuff during it, right? Like they incorporate a gameplay element to break through like with the power of friendship. And I messed it up. So I was like, oh no, they're going to stop believing me. But like, it didn't even matter if you messed it up. Like they still just like with the power of friendship, you bust it out. And I was like, this is very anime, and it's funny because the only anime I tend to watch are the shonen anime where everything is done with the power of friendship. So it felt very, very familiar to me.
Yeah, I don't watch a lot of anime, but I do play a lot of JRPGs where that's also another thing where with the power of friendship, you too can attack and dethrone God. So not in this game, but
I know it.
Yeah, I know it. Let's see, other boss fights. You mentioned the wolf, Rochefort is his name. I think it's a Three Musketeers reference, or Monte Cristo, one of the two, I can't remember. That was another cool spectacle fight. One that I didn't really love because all three fights were basically the same thing, but I did like fighting in the Scrooge McDuck vault of gold coins at the end, because he's like the treasurer or something of the company. So that was cool. I enjoyed that spectacle. Fighting the giant wolf is fun. They mix up the bosses. I think the first one is like a giant robot that you fight. The first or second boss, something like that. Really cool spectacle in those. And then the final boss against Kale was kind of like a bit of a letdown, like not as much spectacle as I would have hoped, but it does go on for a while. There's a bunch of different phases to it. So it felt properly like difficult from a gameplay perspective, but after fighting a giant mech wolf, just a couple bosses earlier, it was a bit like you're just fighting a guy in that. He's doing a Dr. Octopus thing.
I was literally just about to say Dr. Octopus shows up at the end. And it's funny because like he has a few phases where like, and then he gets to his Dr. Octopus thing, I think it's second or third phase, but I couldn't figure out how to damage his little like snake arms for the longest time. I was like, what do I do here? So I just started spamming all my call-ins for the side characters until their arms started falling off. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but it's working now. So that fight wasn't my favorite. My favorite in the game.
Not my favorite. Just kind of like a final test, like how quickly can you identify which teammate to call in and then call them in so you can break down the barriers so you can go hurt him, basically. But it's fine. Do you have anything else from the game that really stood out as something you want to mention?
Not that I can remember. I think I mentioned that my big ones with the big robot and then Corsica, and yeah. Those are my big sticking points for me that I fully remember. I know there were a few, like, I didn't do any of those doors, right? Like where you had to go, but I didn't do any of those. I was like, I'm moving on to my next game. I don't really do this anymore.
Yeah, I was intrigued, like when I beat the game and they said, like, there's more content if you go back in the levels. I was like, oh, cool. We're going to have like secret boss fights or stuff like that. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna save that. Like a couple days before I do the podcast, I'm gonna fire it back up. I'm gonna go do those doors. And then I did the first level. I couldn't find the door, so then I looked in a guide, and it was like, yeah, you find the door and you go do these combat arena challenges. And I was like, oh, I'm not doing that. I don't like combat arena challenges, so no thanks.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how I feel. I was like, I don't have time for that. I beat the game. I did everything I wanted to do. Yeah, no, it's nothing else for me. I really enjoyed my time with it.
Yeah, same here. I think this is the shortest episode of the show yet. We got into the meat of the gameplay, which is what I really wanted to talk about here is the gameplay in this game and the music and stuff like that. Cool 9 Inch Nails in the last boss fight. That was fun. Again, one of the only licensed songs that I recognize. There were others that played, like, because they'll put the title card up and say a Hi-Fi Rush original for the songs that are not 9 Inch Nails or the Black Keys and stuff like that. I forgot to shout out, I'll say it now. The OST is created by 3 people who have the credit for it. Shuichi Kobori, Reo Uratani, and Masatoshi Yanagi. And they did a great job. Again, I just want to bring that up, mention them by name. Of course, when I'm playing a game and I hear 9 Inch Nails or the Black Keys, I'm like, fuck yeah, awesome. But the original music was also great. So good moment in the Kale fight of the 9 Inch Nails song. And I forget the song. It's not Closer. It's another one.
Imagine
Can you
Closer.
Imagine Closer? Yeah. I wonder if there's going to be a mod scene where people put different songs into the game and just kind of like adjust the beat of everything.
That would be awesome if the modding community did something like that.
Yeah, I'm imagining like Dragon Force playing, and that's like ultra hard mode for this game.
All your attacks are useless.
Yeah. So yeah, this has been a good time. Short episode, but quality nonetheless. Kevin, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm glad I could talk about spread the word of Hi-Fi Rush, because I
Yeah.
know Ethan and I did our own review a while back on it, and we were both really high on it over on my channel. So I'm glad to know that other people love the game just as much as I do.
Yeah, absolutely. And like by the time this episode comes out, Hi-Fi Rush will be like firmly, it's already lost its like release buzz, but it will be firmly in backlog territory for people. So hopefully this episode and like the amount of praise that we heaped on it will inspire some people to go pick it up. It'll probably still be on Game Pass. Otherwise, like you said, it's not a $70 new game. So hopefully people give it a shot. It's great.
It's first party. It's never leaving Game Pass, people.
Okay, there we go. That's right. Published by Bethesda. So yeah.
Yes,
Hell yeah.
And it's only 10 hours long, as we said. No reason not to play it. That's a quick backlog checklist.
Exactly. That is such a selling point when someone is like, this game's great and it's 10 hours long. I'm like, all right, where do I sign?
I love those shorter experiences.
Yeah.
Like, I will take, people are always complaining, like, I don't want to pay $70 for a 12-hour game. I was like, I will pay you more money to make the game shorter. Like, I don't want, like, don't give me 100 hours. I don't want to play 100 hours of any game these days. Give me maximum 20. All right.
See, so we're recording this in April and I am preparing for 100 hours of Tears of the Kingdom, but
ooh,
I'm ready for that. I want it, but any 5, 10, 15 hour game that's worth a play, it's so much more likely that I'm going to play that than, you know, hey, I think you would like this. It's 70 hours long. I'm like, whew. I mean, maybe I will, but maybe I won't. But I think you like this and it's 10 hours long. Hell yeah.
I go very much between, I play 3 genres primarily. I play linear story games, which this is very much in that camp, which are like those 10-hour experiences. And then I play platformers, which are not very long, like 6-8 hour experiences. And then I play JRPGs.
Right.
No in between. I go from 10 to 40 in a drop of the dime.
Right. Yeah. Kind of same from being on a big JRPG kick lately, and CRPGs too, which people are going to hear in the coming months as I play through Baldur's Gate and stuff like that. Ooh. Those are big games. So again, always appreciate these. And again, I appreciate you coming on, Kevin. Everyone out there listening, check out Save the Game. You will find whatever you want wherever you play your games. Save the Game has you covered. So again, down in the show notes, you'll find a link. Highly recommended. So thank you everybody for listening. Tune in next week for the next game to come out of the backlog.